Welcome to Tramlines, a podcast from Agrii. I'm your host, Tony Smith, putting your questions to the experts. Today we're going to be talking with Robert Stacey, Managing Director of Rowe Farming here in Cornwall, and Mike Dray, Agrii agronomist. Today we're going to be exploring the crop of daffodils, growing both for the cut market and also the bulb market, understanding what it takes to get that produce to market, the intricacies, the complexities and the challenges. So good morning to you, Rob, and it's fantastic to be down here in Cornwall on this quite windy day. So tell me a bit about your farm operation down here.
So Rowe Farming is a large-scale producer of daffodils as a cut flower and subsequently dry bulbs. We operate over approximately a 50-mile radius inside West and Mid Cornwall, as far north as nearly Bude, which is virtually on the border. But we operate over 2,500 acres, of which any one time 2,000 acres is in the primary daffodil bulb crop.
And well, we can see the pickers very, very busy picking the flowers here today. So let's walk down here a little bit and just tell me a bit about, well, what's the operation today?
So we're right at the peak of our daffodil cut flower harvest. We've got just over 450 people actively harvesting flowers today of a seasonal workforce which is in excess of 600. They are spread across that wide area in groups of between 60 and 70 and harvesting for a cut flower market which spreads across UK retail and export into Europe, United States, Scandinavia and beyond.
So you've been a daffodil grower for a long time. Tell me a bit about your journey with this crop.
So I started working for a daffodil business over 30 years ago, and with 1 year sabbatical I've been doing it ever since via a number of different business vehicles. We've developed the business to where it is, and we've collected people, methodology and expertise along the way, which has allowed us to deliver the customer requirements that we make promises to annually. We're in a constant state of change, but because of the long-term nature of the daffodil crop, we have to be minded that all the changes and decisions we make have long-term implications, and it's a long-term decision-making process with a layer of reactiveness during the course of a flower harvest.
Right, and Mike, let's bring you in here. You're the agronomist here on this farm. So what's the window for cutting these flowers here?
Well, quite a small window with the mild weather that we've got at the moment. You know, these crops are growing an inch a day or at a rapid rate. So managing for Rob and the team to manage the logistics of staff and numbers of staff in fields is quite a challenge, and it's a military operation to see these guys in action to manage to get these people in the right place and crop harvested.
So for how long would this picking season go on for? So
I mean we picking daffodils from Christmas really. You quite often a few at Christmas time. So from the start of January through until April, it's flat out. So yeah.
And something I've been fascinated by, I mean, we're in a field here with, I think if I've got this right, just over 60 pickers here. But you've got how many teams out picking today?
12 in total, spread across that area, all detailed and designed to be matched to the amount of crop in a given location for a given specification. One team of 106 I think today, and there's a couple of teams at 20 which will be doing a more specialist job, tailored to suit what we expect of them. Yeah. And obviously hopefully deal with the weather implication.
Yeah, I think it's getting windier by the minute, but let's just walk on a little bit more, because that's the cut flower. What was that?
This is a nice day for Cornwall.
This is a nice day for Cornwall. I've got full mountain gear on here today.
There's no liquid sunshine today though, Tony. It's nice and dry overhead currently.
It is, you're absolutely right. So this is the cut flower. Tell us then a bit about the bulb market.
So we're primarily a cut flower producer. That's the sole focus. I've never considered that it's possible to be a cut flower producer and a champion dry bulb producer. the two crops are intrinsically linked, and your business model has to take that into account. Effectively, from our perspective, the dry bulbs are a byproduct of the necessary regeneration of the flower crop, but our main focus is on being a primary cut flower producer, and that results in between 1,000 and 2,000 tonnes of surplus dry bulbs each year that we then have to market, and those are marketed both internally in the UK and as an export crop in exactly the same way as our flower crop is marketed.
And from your point of view and an agronomy point of view, what's the difference in terms of challenges for growing for those two final markets, that the cut flower and the bulbs?
I don't think there is a difference really. I mean, what we see is that the health of the crop, the healthier we keep the crop this year, the better off we are in terms of flower yields the following year, and ultimately bulb yields in whatever its final year, fourth year, whatever. So it's a challenge of just and with varieties varieties have different disease susceptibilities. We see it, some varieties are cleaner than others. So the challenge really is because of the logistics of managing the crop in this 40-mile radius. That's the challenge, is getting fungicide on at the right time in this kind of winter period, really.
Rob, what's your focus in terms of what you're looking for from this crop in terms of moving from this year to the next 2 or 3 years?
So it's about us making a combined approach to the marketing of the product, which is the flowers, versus your capacity to deliver that product over approximately 120-day sailing season. So what we're looking to do is try and maintain the flower harvest profile. Varieties flower at different times and are more or less susceptible to weather conditions. We need to maintain that diversity of flower harvest profile so that once we engage the staff, once we engage the customer base, we've got as much continuity as possible inside and around the vagaries of the British weather. Our customers can't put a product on the shelf on day one and then us phone up 2 days later and say it's not here. So we have to deal with all of those challenges and deliver consistency and continuity so that we can retain the customer base that will allow us to retain the revenues that will allow us to pay the bills, and the whole thing's one big circle.
Now, we're walking amongst all the pickers here who are working so busily. They really are. I'm not sure that I could do that for a day. So let's ask you about the focus of looking at the crop and how to improve quality and what you're looking at. I understand that you've got some trials in the ground, Mike.
Yeah, we're doing fungicide trials this year again with Rob. This second year, alongside the fungicide trials, actually 19 treatments, 3 reps, and then we've also got a biostimulant trial going on this year as well to see what if there's anything interesting to come out of that. So it's the armoury is quite limited in daffodils, as you can imagine. So it's good to just understand that the chemistry we're using is still working and see if there's anything coming forward we could use.
What would be on your wish list of what you could improve in terms of what you can do to protect these crops?
So I think it's all about being ahead of the game with the development of the fungicide availability and how you can integrate that into delivering it in a very volatile operational environment, Christmas till Easter, really. It's about, like many other things in the business, we have to have a diverse approach, lots of strings to the bow, in order to protect the crop in the best way possible over the short, medium and long term. And it's about making sure we keep as many options open as possible going forward.
Yeah.
Well, we really know how good a job we've done next year in terms of flower counts. That's really the key driver in terms of knowing how good this yield, flower yields are. We quite often talk about flower yields being up or down and quite often not disease necessarily, but drought or stress or whatever may be influencing those flower yields.
But it's an example of the long-term nature and thought process you have to have with daffodils, because the measure of how we've done for the last year, last 2 years, last 3 years, and a measure of how robust our strategic thinking was with planting and stock management is all becoming apparent during this flower harvest, and the same with the agronomy. So as with another kind of crop, live and die by the benefits of what you've done in the same 3 or 4 month period. Yeah. Daffodils, it's a much longer time frame than that, both with the historic impact and your looking forward approach.
View a range of handouts and videos looking at the vast range of biodiversity and natural resources on farm, and simple practical measures that you can take to improve habitats and ecosystems. Link in bio. And so you've talked a lot about understanding what's happened in the previous crop. Is understanding the crop in terms of measuring yield and number of cut flowers, all of that data, is that data really important to helping you make good decisions?
Very much so. It's important about budgets, it's important about customer promises, it's important with regard to analysis of what inputs you might need, staff, scalability, cash flows. You have to understand that so that you can make adequate forward-looking predictions.
Yeah. So let's move on and think a little bit about the challenges for the farm. Farming right now is under that spotlight from an environmental perspective. How is that landing for you?
Yeah, so I think what you would have found down here over a number of years is there's been a policy of broadcasting barley crops over ridges, freshly planted ridges, to try and hold soil, and with Rob we're taking that forward quite a step really at Rowe Farming with actually sowing grass in between rows to suppress weeds and also to hold on to soil and stop erosion, and that's an ongoing sort of, it's a bit more than a trial now actually, it's quite a scale going on. So that's quite interesting, and the Environment Agency, I'm very much on board with that sort of approach really.
And what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What are you trying to improve by sowing that grass? What are your thoughts, Rob?
So it's got perceived multiple benefits. We're not 100% sure of any negative impact yet because it will take some time for that to evolve, but it's about maintaining soil structure, it's about weed suppression, it's about retention of water at given times of the year. We have to be careful that it doesn't take up too much water at other times of the year, and it's also about giving ourselves further options as we go forward with regard to herbicide and weed control.
So how important is soil health when it comes to this specific crop?
We have to remember that the crop is in the land for 4 years, sometimes 5, occasionally 3, but ballpark 4. And maintaining the crop's access to nutrient. You only get one opportunity to put nutrient in the seed bed, and it has to survive over a number of years on its own steam, but also taking into account the previous cropping and, as Mike's alluded to, the aspiration of the landlord with the subsequent cropping. But you only get one chance of crop establishment, and you then have to deliver 3 or 4 flower harvests from that. So making sure that you are starting in the right place with the right soil structure and the right approach to base nutrient establishment and the quality of how you establish it is key.
So we've talked quite a lot about the crop and harvesting that crop, the markets that you're growing for. What are the key challenges for your farm business going forwards?
Ever increasing cost of labour is a huge challenge. We've seen in excess of 10% labour cost increase in the last 3 years. April the 1st is going to see another 10 or 12%, and that affects every person in the business from one end of the spectrum to the other. Labour availability, which is a different factor to cost of labour, and cost of employment, which is another factor altogether that is about how much time and energy it takes to create a working environment that everybody's happy with, that will help support the other factors such as labour availability. All these things are costing on management time and money going forward, coupled with the overall ever rising cost of inputs from tractors, chemical, fertiliser, land. It's all escalating, so our commercial aspirations have to keep up with that.
Yeah, and in fact, we were just walking through your machinery shed on the way here, and you were sharing the cost of some of those parts and also the key units. I mean, it's staggering cost, isn't it?
It is indeed. I mean, it's 10 times what it was 20 years ago, and the level of intricacy and the amount of equipment we now need to deliver a sustainable business has also expanded.
Yeah, and also you shared, you showed us some other machinery where they're very, very bespoke to what you're doing on this particular farm and with this crop, aren't they?
Yeah, we spent quite a bit of time developing bulb harvesting machinery that not only is bespoke to growing daffodil bulbs, but also tailored to the environment of working in West Cornwall. On a hillside with plenty of granite around is not quite the same as operating on a nice flat silt fen field.
Mike, just from an agronomic point of view, as the agronomist here, what are the challenges that you can see going forwards?
Well, obviously, loss of chemistry is a big one in our industry, isn't it? But without doubt, the climate is changing. We have these periods of either wet or dry, and lots of these crops go through periods of drought, and how we kind of alleviate the stress, I think, is probably quite key really at the moment.
And I know you have a growing operation in Scotland. What does that add to your overall business in terms of producing the cut flower and bulbs?
It's about diversity of supply. One of our key dates inside the commercial calendar is Easter. Obviously, Easter changes yearly. Cornwall will produce daffodils from the beginning of the season until the last. So it's actually the part of the country where there's the widest daffodil harvest. But being in another part of the country, Scotland and Lincolnshire, gives us some diversity against adverse weather conditions you've just raised. And it also means that we can grow a higher percentage of late daffodils in Scotland to complement or supplement what we have in Cornwall.
And as we look up those rows and we can see that's 60 or so pickers really busy picking this year's cut flower crop, how does that make you feel when you put all that work into growing that crop?
It's great. So even some of the basics, like the fact that we're looking at the crop field here actually changing colour as people are harvesting it all by hand. It's highly labour intensive, and these guys are turning the work and the effort of the rest of us over the last 4 years into revenue and wages for themselves, which is the lifeline to continue.
And there was something you said just as we drove into the field here, which was that, you made a quote that you look forward to the first day of cutting flowers, but you also look forward to the last. Is that right?
I always look forward to the first day of the flower harvest, and at some point during that flower harvest, we start looking forward to the last day. And I don't think that's ever going to change.
So, Mike, you look after cereals as well as these daffodil crops. What do you get out of looking after this crop?
It's fascinating to have something different. It's such a key crop for Cornwall, so it's unique to us from that point of view. So for you guys to come down and have a look at a field of daffodils, and we see it every day, but I mean it's just a fascinating crop to be involved in. The logistics of making it all happen is just it's pretty special.
And to wrap the podcast up, from your point of view, Rob, with all of your experience, what top tips would you share with those listening today that maybe they could take away and think about and take into their farm business?
Surround yourself with good people. Spend as much time as you can getting as much help and doing as much work to try and train people and encourage them to want to be involved in the business, because as it expands and becomes more complicated, you can't do it all yourself.
Well, thank you, Rob and Mike, for sharing your valuable time at what I know is a really busy time of year for you, cutting those flowers ready for market. And good luck for the rest of the season. That's it for this podcast, but do tune in again as we meet the experts throughout the season, exploring the many immediate and longer-term questions for growers and farmers in the UK. If you have any questions that you'd like us to ask the experts, email info@agrii.co.uk. See you next time.